In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.
Well, welcome everyone to the Ogle County Peer Support Network, and we are extremely excited to have some very special guests here today. Our very own Sheriff Brian Vanvickle and Josh Lewis. No relation to Chief Mike Lewis here, but you both.
Well, you'd have to go way back.
Oh,
Probably.
Yeah, okay. Well, I do kind of see a resemblance. So when I look at the hairstyle between yours and his, sort of.
You need new glasses.
Oh, boy. So this will air during EMS Week, which is May 19th through the 25th. And EMS Week celebrates paramedics, EMTs, and other EMS professionals who work diligently to care for their patients and serve their communities in times of crisis. Straight from EMSweek.org, this is what they said. This year, as we recognize the 50th anniversary of the first National EMS Week, we honor those who came before us, especially those who challenged the status quo and raised the bar for all of us. And at the same time, we look forward, building on their efforts and committing ourselves to forge a future for the next generation of EMS professionals to serve their communities. So, in the event that someone doesn't know what EMS stands for, it stands for Emergency Medical Services, and that's where the first responder aspect comes in, that you are providing urgent pre-hospital treatment and stabilization for serious illness and injuries in the field. So, Josh, you are a firefighter, paramedic for Rochelle Fire Department and part-time patrol deputy, and I know we'll give you a chance a little bit later to tell us all about yourself. And then, of course, our very own Sheriff Brian Vanvickle. To start off, let me thank you both for being here today. And, Sheriff, I just want to give you the moment right now to I'm looking at something on the table there, and I want you just to tell us about that.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize the members of our agency when they do something outside the norm. While, I think the vast majority of us realize that our job is to save lives and do things that are special. There are some things that are just a little bit above and beyond. And Josh received the life-saving award from the Sheriff's Office this morning from an incident that happened on January 28th of this year. I will start by saying that this incident is very sensitive because it's a juvenile, so there's not a lot we can go into. But I will read this, and we'll try to dance around the edges and explain the best we can of what happened. But again, the award says, for your actions on January 28, 2024, in which you took the initiative to respond to an EMS call while off-duty for a teenager with a gunshot wound to the neck. Your quick response combined with superior application of training and experience resulted in saving of a life. You are to be commended for your excellence in the performance of duty, the preservation of life, and the service to the community, which are cornerstones to our mission and values. So a little bit of background, and Josh will probably dive into this a little bit more. He's also a SWAT medic for our SWAT team. So, he's a full-time paramedic, part-time deputy, and he's also on our SWAT team as a paramedic, essentially. And so on this day, the incident actually happened in his fire district, so he was, toned to the call. So he had an idea what was going on, but we give our SWAT medics access to our computer system, our CAD system on their phone. So he was able to see what was going on and actually got on our radio and asked, the sergeant if he wanted Josh to go directly to the scene or respond to the station like, you would normally do. And so he was requested to go to the scene, and when he got there, he operated under our protocols and not necessarily the fire department's protocols, but that quick thinking and the tactical, training that he has with the gunshot wound, according to the trauma surgeons and those at the hospital, saved her life. And so, being able to think outside the box and really perform under pressure not only saved her life, but it also took a really bad situation for our deputies and brought some comfort to them because, quite honestly, when we show up to somebody with a gunshot wound to the neck, there's not a whole lot that a deputy's going to do. And so Josh was right there behind him. He just lives a couple miles away. So, he really took the initiative to think outside the box from the very beginning. And it certainly resulted in saving of that life and giving that, juvenile a second chance at life.
That's pretty phenomenal. And certainly I know it's kind of speechless in a way because, I've always maintained that first responders are the hands of God, and God's working through your hands. And I think this is a clear example of, and I'm sure you probably felt a sense of urgency, but, a little bit of divine intervention as well with you. And I know you can't really say a whole lot about it, but I think I wanted to just emphasize the fact that I believe and I teach that God is working through your hands. And, I feel like this is proof that God does not abandon people in these storms of life. You can't always save everybody, but some of these things are just amazing, and they should be recognized and honored. So with that nice plaque, that award that you get to put up on the wall somewhere, you also get a ribbon to wear on your uniform.
Yes. Which
is really cool. So thank you. And, Sheriff, I think what we'll do is we'll just want to let Josh explain a little bit about himself, too. And you are a pretty busy guy, and you are married. You have children, and I just recently learned that you and I probably felt much the same. I have 4 daughters, you have 4 daughters, and I often felt like I was swimming in a sea of estrogen with no life raft.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so just tell us a little bit about yourself.
So obviously I'm Josh Lewis. I live right outside of Rochelle area. I've been down here for probably 18 years-ish. I came from Belvedere area, came down to this area for work. Growing up, I was around the fire service, but I didn't have family in the fire service. I knew police officers and sheriff's deputies and all kinds of first responders who have been always something to look up to. So that kind of sparked my interest really young. Around 5 years old, I was going to a bunch of extrication competitions that my mom helped arrange, and she works for the EMS office. And so I was subjected to it, but never realistically thought about being a paramedic. I just wanted to do either the police side or the fire side and do, the fight the fires, to cut the cars, to dive, to, bust the bad guys and all of that growing up as a kid, or be a fighter jet pilot. I was all over the place, but I knew something along those lines. Just kind of fell into Rochelle and Ogle County, and at the time I'd been to Ogle County. I knew Ogle County, but I didn't know it very well, and it was nothing but a great fit. And everybody was welcoming with open arms, and yeah, I do have a wife and 4 children, and 5 children, but 4 girls that I produced, or had a part in anyway. So absolutely, the whole swimming in estrogen, I completely understand. So it goes from a very alpha situation at work that you get with some of the first responders who are very push, to you go home and you have to learn how to slow that down. And when my daughters say one thing and you can't respond to them the way you do to other deputies and firefighters, and I had to learn how to do that. So, but yeah, I've been a full-time firefighter paramedic for almost 18 years now. I've been with the sheriff's office. I think we started doing things and started working with the SWAT team around 2009, 2010, just kind of like helping them out. Hey, we can do this, we can do this. And a lot of things transferred over there, but the program really didn't take off until Sheriff Vanvickle took over. He was definitely a big player in the game in getting this moving. At the point where he took over, we kind of had all the right players in the right places at the right time, and we were able to challenge that status quo and bump it up quite a bit. So since then, I became more and more interested in law enforcement and the way things are changing in the world. We were approached and basically like, hey, if you want to go to a part-time academy, here's how you make it happen, and became a part-time deputy and police officer. So,
well, you're a pretty well-rounded guy, but I didn't hear you say anything about the chaplaincy in your future.
So, Gary, you talk about dedication, but, I think it's important to bring up, he talks about the part-time academy, just a part-time academy. Most people don't understand what that is, but it's a significant commitment for those folks. It's every other weekend for 14 months.
That was a while.
It's a long time. And they drove to Galesburg, easy for me to say, Galesburg, to go to class. So, it was a big commitment on their part.
Boy, that is, yeah. Well, then that brings up just a thought that I had. It's like with as much as you do and have done, there's got to be challenges to finding a balance. And your wife must be a saint.
My wife is a saint. I don't tell her that enough. She has put up with a lot. She's been completely supportive. The day I remember making the phone call, she was at work, and I'm like, hey, when you go on break, give me a call, because we had talked about doing the academy, but it was a very short period of time that we had to get enrolled. So I asked her to give me a call on break. She called me, and I'm like, hey, how's work going? And she's like, I got this and this and this. And she's a nurse. She just finished NP school. So she's been working as a nurse for, a decent amount of years now. Yeah. So she calls me on break, and of course she's telling me she's having this go on and that go on. And I said, oh, okay, sorry about that. So what do you think about me going to the police academy? And she's like, you're quitting the fire service now? And I'm like, no. She's like, what about your pension? She's asking all these questions. I'm like, hear me out. So I explained the whole process, and she's like, you were headed in that direction anyway, so whatever you feel, we'll make work. And so for those weekends, and then there was online trainings, and then there's other specialty trainings in it, along with keeping up everything else. Every other weekend, she just handled the kids while I was gone all day Saturday and Sunday, and then jump right back in the schedule when I get home. And then she has been completely supportive. And there's been some discussions, hey, you need to balance this or you need to balance that. And she is really good at reminding me. Yeah. But she does it in a way to where I'm like, okay, I've been neglecting that, or I need to change this a little bit. Balance is definitely hard. It's I try not to miss anything for my kids, but there are things you miss because you can't get off work, or something else comes up, or you leave in the middle of something. But I think every first responder experiences that to a T. I also have good leaders who have been able to give a good example. Sheriff Vanvickle, I'm sure everybody's heard about the tornado. His house got blown down. He made sure his family was fine and continued to work. That's really something to look up to. And when you have a leader who's willing to do that, and other leaders who've been mentors along the way, you have that to lean on. But finding the balance sometimes is difficult.
Yeah. Well, and we're gonna get to the sheriff on that too as well, finding the balance, because he has quite the legacy, family legacy in public safety as well. But leadership is key, and we've often. Chief Lewis and I have often talked about servant leadership, which I believe is sometimes lacking, and also leading from the front. Where you're not just in the back giving direction and not doing anything yourself, but showing people how to do it. So the idea of peer support, and I can remember talking, and the sheriff was telling us early on that just to have this resource available. For the employees, just say, hey, here's an option, here's a resource, because life is going to be hard and there are going to be sacrifices. And I couldn't be more excited to be a part of this, because I know how important it is to have a trusted resource, and people who do care and people who do get it. And obviously on our peer support team here in Ogle County, we have 5 deputies, and then you have a chaplain, some nutty, crazy chaplain from Byron. But I come from a law enforcement family, so I have a whole different perspective, and I have amazing memories that I cherish to this day. And I realize that it takes all of us working together, sharing perspective, insights, what works, what doesn't work, and what works for me may never work for you, and vice versa. But hey, if there's anything we can do to help one another, that's what we want to do. And sometimes just talking it out and say, hey, I'm really having a hard time. Honestly, he hears more probably than I should tell him.
Yeah.
People look at me and they say, well, you're the pastor. You're supposed to have it all together and have all the answers. Well, surprise, I don't have all the answers and I don't have it all together, but I'm working on it.
Yeah.
So coming from obviously the background that you do and being as involved as you are, you get it, as I'm sure Sheriff Vanvickle, everyone in your immediate family, are either first responders or in the medical profession. So, but you're a dad first. Mm-hmm. And a husband, and we know your wife is a saint.
She is.
To put up
Absolutely.
With you. Yeah. How do you, was it just something you just had to figure out as you went? How do I balance this out? And,
Well, I was fortunate that my kids were obviously older. My baby's going to be 25, I think. I'd have to take off my shoes and use my fingers and toes to figure that out. But I was fortunate that my kids weren't little. And again, just like Josh, my wife is super understanding. She understands what came with this position and the amount of time and dedication that it takes, and being the face for everybody and making sure that everything is done appropriately and correctly. And so she's totally understanding. But yeah, to your point, the family really didn't have that. I had my great grandfather, who I actually remember. He was born in 1887, was a police officer in Stavanger, Norway. I have his badge and his pocket watch up in my office. Came to Omaha, was a cop in Omaha, and so that's really the beginning of the legacy. There was a big gap in time from the early 1900s until I got into law enforcement. So, but my wife's a mental health nurse practitioner. My daughter started out as a dispatcher in DeKalb County, came here to Ogle, and now she's on the road for us. And my son's a fireman at Rochelle with Josh. So, we're kind of, and his fiance is a ER nurse. So, dinner conversations are pretty interesting at our house. My family doesn't really know what to think about some of the stories that we tell, but it really works out well, and it's we're both proud of the kids and the path that they've taken.
That is just amazing, and I've always maintained too that it's not just a job; it is a call. It gets in you, and you can either accept it, but if you don't, if you ignore it, it's still going to be in you. Right. You still got to be a part of it, and that is really, really encouraging. And of course, obviously, you have had your share of challenges along the way. Do you have any advice for young people just entering the profession that you wish you would have known at the beginning of your career?
I had a lot of good advice, but then you also get a lot of bad advice. I think that trying to siphon through those when you're younger is really difficult, or when you're first starting out. The thing that has kind of really helped with me along my career is that, and I've made mistakes. Trust me, I've made mistakes. But I think what has helped along the way is to always try and better the situation, always try and better yourself and leave the place a better place than it was. For me, like I said, I never thought about being a paramedic, and then all of a sudden you end up on a call and you're like, holy cow, I made a difference in somebody's life today. And that right there, I think, is life-changing. To know that you can make somebody's life better just by even talking to them, or doing something, going out of their way, or helping somebody up off the ground, or talking somebody into a better situation than what they were, because they're having bad feelings or bad thoughts or something along those lines. That right there will grab your attention and not let go. I remember being in a truck with my dad as he's driving through the wintertime down a road, and there's people stuck in the snow, and he's pulling everybody out. And I'm like, why do we have to stop for everybody? Let somebody else do it. And I'm that person now. I can't drive by a wreck and not help. I can't just at least make sure they're okay. Somebody's changing a tire. I can't just drive by. It's just that it's not possible. There's been times where my wife's like, listen, we have someplace to be. I'm like, I understand, just 30 more seconds. She's like, that means 5 more minutes. But but at the same time, like, for the younger people, don't be afraid to go in full hand. It's going to take over, but it's going to pay off. Lots of training, lots of retraining. Part of the reason I got into instructing is because every time I instruct something, I have to relearn that over and over and over, and that just makes it sink in. When situations like that call occurs, it's not really thinking about it. I mean, you're thinking, but it's more of you're falling back on your training, and there's not many questions. You just do what you have to do, and there's going to be plenty of situations where we don't really have the answer, but we're still going to try and make it better. So train. There's also a lot like, when you start challenging things like, hey, we can make the service better. We can make this better in law enforcement. We can make this better in the fire service. You will get people who've been in there for a while going, nope, stay in your lane. And I've heard that so many times. But when you have people in the right places who understand that and accept that and give you the baton to run with, you still got to be careful. But I think that's how you make positive change. And when I went through the academy, when I was first coming in, there was a common phrase to shut your mouth, open your eyes and ears. And that helped me a lot, except the new people don't necessarily do that. And you can't necessarily say that anymore. And especially in the tone that we heard, or get kicked in the rear end because you're going to do something dumb. You can't do that anymore. So don't be afraid to take criticism either. I've deserved a lot of the criticism I've gotten, but I've also tried to take that and run with it as well. So always try and better yourself and help those around you. That's, it's going to be ever changing. And I feel like the group of people I came through with are in an era that goes from, one generation meeting another generation, and we're kind of a transfer over. But there's a few who take that bar and run with it, and the others kind of fall into that and start buying in once they see that progression is working out and changing for the better. Sometimes the phones are great, the computers are great, but sometimes you have to pick your head up and look around you on what's going on too, because some of our new people coming through, like as I'm teaching, they're looking up stats on their phone going, actually, last week this was posted. And I said, okay, but here's the point. When you get out there and you have somebody in front of you who needs your assistance or needs help, or something bad is happening, or there's a domestic going on, or there's an active threat going on, you don't have time to look on your phone. So that technology is great, but don't be afraid to learn from the people who've been there and see how you can improve it before you get to the call. And then don't think just because you learned it, it's over with, because you have to relearn it all the time. And admit mistakes. I think that's important.
That's how you learn.
Yeah.
So, and obviously I know the answer, but because we're all dealing with it, this is a new time, a new generation, new mindset, and the challenges. I mean, Sheriff, I'm sure you're the same thing for you. It's like, okay, it's a whole new breed, a whole new.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you just talk about peer support in itself. I mean, in the beginning when Chief brought this idea to me, I'm like, no, we just put it in a box and put it away. And then, once you start thinking about it, there's a new generation that don't know how to do that. Right. They have a different way to deal with things. And so that's, why I think the peer support piece has been so important, is just because it is definitely a different perspective. To Josh's point, it's a different generation, and they do things, they learn things, they grew up different. We grew up with nobody at home after school. It played till the streetlights came on, and it's just a different way of doing things. And so, as a leader, as somebody that's been around for a while, like Josh said, you just have to figure out how to make sure that what we do here at this agency continues, and you just have to figure out a way to make it work for that generation.
Yeah, and there are challenges. I mean, I'm obviously lamenting a lot of times too, because as a career pastor of a church, I see things happening that I don't necessarily approve of, but that are working. And it's like, well, these are different people. This is a different mindset, and sometimes I feel like I'm stuck in a rut, and I'm always trying to force myself out, and I'm always going through that process. And I love listening to you talk about the training and taking the initiative, and you leading from the front as well. I mean, you're the type of guy that we want in our community, in our agency, and when you're ready, you can let me know, and we'll find a place for you in the chaplaincy. But I know that there's a misconception a lot of times, because we are in a more rural area. And we have a big county. It's a large county, but it is more rural. But that does not necessarily mean there's a downgrade in professionalism in anything that we do. And the opposite is really, Chief Lewis and I have talked about patient contact a lot more than in a big city.
Right.
So there are differences, but what I heard you say is there's no downgrade. It is an individual decision to pursue things to be the best that they can be. Any comments or thoughts? Well, I take some water and wash this down.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ways we look at that. I've taught in the larger cities. I've went through academy in the larger cities. You meet a lot of people and do a lot of things with different people when you're in training and teaching training. And not to knock the larger cities at all. They have a very high frequency of calls. We look at them a couple different ways. There's high frequency, low risk, and low frequency, high risk. And there's a bunch in between. What I've noticed, especially in EMS with, say, the fire service or even in police or law enforcement, is they may go to a lot of calls, but a lot of times when you're jumping call to call to call to call, you get used to running those calls, but sometimes those patients may look like a number because, you just go to so many and you have so busy. And there's especially now without having the exact statistics, I think our mental health calls in EMS have rose 70% in the last few years. And so there's a lot at stake there. And, something you say or do might change their world completely. And if I'm rushing through that call, trying to get to the next call, which happens from time to time, you may not be able to give those patients that need. Out in the rural districts, the volunteer world is hurting right now because of a lot of different reasons. So that just requires the people who are into it to be more into it because nobody else is coming. It's you. And so you get very versed in reading people, talking to people. If you go into a bigger city that, if you have a domestic situation or in law enforcement where there is somebody who is creating an issue or you have to challenge or it becomes very aggressive, in the county, it's you for probably 5-10 minutes unless you have somebody else. And then you hit one other person and then maybe another person, minutes later. So you have to learn de-escalation. You have to learn how to deal with that right then and there. The same goes for EMS. You still do have some volunteers out there who are very dedicated, but are they able to keep up with their full-time job and be a paramedic and stack all of those on top? That's a balancing act. So the people who are out there, they've raised the bar here at the sheriff's office drastically with medical training. Medical training, when we first started coming around for law enforcement, it was there, but it was in the back of their mind. With the world the way it is today, if you're not getting a paramedic or you're not getting somebody there, you kind of have to self-rescue on that. So we, since then, when I first started coming around the ERT and the SWAT team, I think one person had a tourniquet. One. Now we're to the point where everybody minimum has one tourniquet where they can reach it with both hands. They know how to use it. They know how to put it on other people. They know that, they have a very well-versed idea on what medical takes, what they can do. And so now you see sheriff's deputies showing up to those medical calls where before they might be sitting down the road being like, yeah, they got this. So I like to think I helped take a part in that, but honestly, it was all proved from the top down. So, and you have buy-in from those players. So, yeah, the cities run a lot of calls to larger areas, but also in these rural areas, especially Ogle County, what I've noticed is like when you show up to a call, it doesn't have to be the big calls. It doesn't have to be the life-altering calls because those are there. You see death, you see a lot of things nobody should ever have to see. And when I came through, just like Sheriff said, it was meant you didn't talk about it. Yeah. You hushed your mouth and you went back to work and you trained more and you just pushed forward. And that's probably not the best way to deal with things, and we're learning that. But when you have those situations of, say, somebody falls down and bumps their knee and they're not really hurt, but then you get there, you can change their whole life perspective just by showing up, helping them up, and, hey, I noticed you had dinner in the microwave. Can I help you out with this? Can I clean this up for you? Those kind of things right there build that relationship and can change somebody's world. There's another deputy I work with on occasion, and I heard about him talking to a gentleman for an hour and a half who was talking about committing suicide. To me, and they related and built rapport. To me, that probably changed that guy's life more than any counselor ever would have, because now they've related on that level, and essentially he saved that guy's life that night. That guy didn't commit suicide, even though that's the road he was going down. That's inspiring. You don't necessarily, and you'll get that in the cities, but a lot of times in the cities they have the resources to throw numbers at it. We don't. So you have to learn how to cope with that and how to do that. So I don't think it's a downgrade in service. I think we've just adjusted to that. So every contact you make, every day-to-day thing that you would think is normally, okay, get this done, move on to the next, is actually turning into, what can I do to make this better? So it's, changing lives and helping in the future. And it helps you too, because now if he goes back and that guy is in a situation again, he has that rapport and he remembers what that guy did for him. So now, instead of watching the news and seeing how people are acting with law enforcement or EMS or whoever these days, now you get, hey, you know what? That guy helped me out. How's it going? And if you're wearing the same uniform, that reflects on everybody. Now, if you mess that up, and you say the wrong thing, now I'm wearing the same uniform, I'm not the same person. He's like, hey, screw you, buddy. So, I think we have to, I think we're very good at paying attention to that and making a difference every day, not just on the big calls, but every single call. And I think that's a big deal. With, the deputies who responded to this call that day, they were more than capable of handling that. But there was a sense of calm I noticed when I was there that, I've dealt with this stuff before and I've trained on this stuff a lot more than they have, because they have different specialties and different situations. So everybody there had a hand in this. Everybody there was, anything I asked for, I got. Anything I needed, I got. Besides maybe a response from a helicopter that didn't happen because of the weather, but we can't change that. However, the teamwork, like you were saying, the divine intervention there, I truly believe that. Everything fell into the right place at the right time, the right area. So it's we truly have some blessed resources in this county, in the rural areas. And just because we don't have all the resources like a bigger city doesn't mean I don't think they're going without a lack of service. We've just had to up our game on the pre-hospital or the law enforcement side or the fire side, as opposed to having a hospital across the street or having a level 1 trauma center 2 minutes away. So that allows us to do those extra things to provide that care that normally they wouldn't get until they get to a hospital. So,
and listening to you talk, it really reminds me of yesteryear when my grandfather was walking the beat, and the neighborhood cop. And in his case, he was in a busy downtown shopping district. He was the guy, so he was it, walking his beat, and you really had to just do everything. And you strike me, in listening to you talk, as someone who's very passionate and committed. And I don't know how you can do this job without being passionate and committed. And I'm sure, Sheriff, for you, it's easy to kind of spot the ones, and I was like, this guy's going to be great, or this guy, what a waste, And I know you can't say that, but you're the type of guy that we want here and on the team. And I've always paid attention, and I've been doing this now with Chief. It's been this is my 24th year, really, and I've got to watch a lot of highly motivated, wonderful people. And I've always said that, for a smaller community, we've got some amazing people here who are just committed, and that's what makes this a wonderful place to live. And I'm from a big city, so I understand the difference. If there was maybe one thing that you could say for the time that we're living in, and maybe what you think might be on the horizon, is there one thing that troubles you more than anything else, would you say?
I'll let Josh think. I just off the cuff, my first thought is that people are putting other people first less and less. To do this job and to do it at the level that Josh and others do, you have to put other people first, and you come second. And we're at a time where that's very difficult to find, and so I think that is a concern. We still have great people here, but the pool is much smaller. There's a much smaller selection of people that are willing to do that, and to Josh's point, that's how we have all of the big city resources in the rural Midwest is because people cross-train, people do all this other stuff so that they can fill that void. Because without them, there would certainly be a void because we don't have that box to check like they do in the city.
Yeah. And is it troubling thinking about the future, for what you do?
We're still raising good kids here. Yeah. I always, when we have a hiring process, and it seems like we're doing it all the time, I'm thrilled to see the local kids because you have a pretty good idea what you're going to get when it's a local kid.
Yeah.
I went to do a job fair last year, and somebody asked what do you look for, and a new hire, I said a farm kid, somebody that can get up, go to work, talk to anybody, and fix it with a pair of pliers and baling wire. I'm like, if you can think outside the box and do that stuff, you're going to be successful no matter what you do, but I want you to come work for me.
Yeah, I like that. What do you think, Josh?
I'd have to agree. The whole process of putting people before you. I just kind of grew up like that, so I didn't know any better. And then once I got into, the first responder world, and with the newer people coming in, I'm like, you don't know how to wash clothes, or you don't know how to do this, and those are little things. We can teach them that, but teaching people how to treat people, especially in today's world, you and I may not seeing things the same way. I don't think that's how it is. But there may be somebody you're sitting across the table from that you don't agree with, or you don't agree with their views. It doesn't change the fact that they're a human being and that their life really matters. I think there's a lot of things that have changed along the years, but I also think some of the kids growing up in that don't realize that human life isn't a video game. You don't respawn. Right. You don't get to treat people a certain way and expect them to just put you on a pedestal. It doesn't work that way. That's the reality of it. I think social media is great, but I think it's created an issue with people coming through that can blast off and say really hurtful things or really mean things and kind of step down the true not meaning of life, but the true, respect of somebody else, because they don't have to face that person face to face. And whether, politics right now are insane. And you have to understand, in my opinion, you have to understand, like, those people are all doing their own thing without even understanding what is affecting everybody. And so whether you believe in this or believe in that or come from this neighborhood, your life is still important. And many times I have put things like dinners or shopping with my kids or whatever, put that aside to make sure that I can make somebody's life better or prolong somebody's life. That's hard to teach somebody who hasn't grown up that way. The farm kids, that's exactly what it is. Like those farm kids coming out or people who grew up in that atmosphere, they're willing to go to work. They're willing to do those things. They're willing to, a lot of them understand that life is more important than anything you ever put on Facebook. So, or whatever your social media platform is. So I think that's really important. Like Sheriff was saying, the people who are interested in this job are very slim. Like you will see the people who are really interested and who want to learn and who get out there and, will follow you around, literally follow you around and ask you questions about what you did with this and how you did this and how you did that. Those are promising things. I think the entitlement needs to go away. I don't know how to make that happen, but we get new kids who come in who, new kids, they're 21, whatever. Yeah. I feel weird saying that because I was that guy not too long ago. But when they come in and they're like, well, I did this class and this class, so I should be an ex-officer or a leader. And I'm like, you can be a leader, but it's going to take a while to understand the huge atmosphere of that, or the huge effects of that. But it's crazy to see people coming through and saying, no, I took this class last year. Now I should be in this position. And I'm like, hang on, bud. And I was probably there. I was probably that kid. And, but there's been a lot of experience there to move forward. But, when I tested for the fire department, when I was looking at, law enforcement and all of that, it was not too long after 9/11 and everybody wanted to be in the fire service. And then it kind of dwindled down. And then with all kinds of different things affecting those atmospheres and those environments and those outlooks on things. One time we tested for the fire department, and what you would normally see is 20, 30 people for Rochelle test. It was like 6 people. I tested, when I was first testing, I tested for a place in by Chicago, and I think that there was 4,000 applications taken out for 3 guaranteed positions. You don't see that anymore. You don't. It's, they're putting it out there saying, hey, we're testing with 10, 12 guaranteed positions. And people are like, especially after the whole pandemic, that kind of changed a lot of people's outlook on things that we do. And it changed everything, right? But you don't have as many people interested. But I think when you notice somebody coming through that is very interested and does have those qualities, it's very difficult not to really push to try and get them, because you know that that could be the future of your organization. And that's more of the sheriff's thing. But when I'm teaching classes and those people come through, I'm like, here, let me show you everything I know. Back in the day, they would talk about there's a lot of people who viewed things as knowledge was power, so you didn't share that. I had a very good mentor, an assistant chief of the volunteer department I was on. Right before he passed away, he looked at me, he's like, everything you learn, pass along, because it's not powerful unless you pass it along to somebody else. So every time I teach a class, every time I try and show somebody something that they don't know or refresh their memory on something that I've learned from other people, I wasn't born with this knowledge, Every time I pass that along, I see it as another way that can help somebody else. Not only the responders, but if I teach somebody CPR and they do CPR to somebody else and that helps save their life, I just in a roundabout way helped somebody's day get better, somebody's family's day get better, somebody's generations get better. And that's a big deal. Trying to show other people that is a big deal too, but it's a challenge sometimes trying to explain it when I don't understand their background.
Yeah, and I think something that people don't realize with the training is last year we presented Deputy Kyle White with a life-saving award. He did CPR on a 3-month-old baby. He took a CPR class that did the infant training the day before with Josh.
Wow.
So,
and this is very awkward to receive because I'm not looking for this. And when I found out, I was like, okay, thank you, but that's not what I was in it for, and you don't want people to think that. It is really refreshing to know, like, okay, I'm definitely making a difference and people are noticing. But at the same time, that patient's outcome was huge. Knowing that she's going to live a long life, hopefully, that she wasn't going to up until that time. Hearing from Kyle the night that situation happened where he did the CPR on the infant, that sunk in, because as many hours as you put into teaching, as many hours as you put into helping people, you don't always hear the outcomes or you don't always see the effects. And he literally texted and called me that night, and he was like, this worked. It all played into a role, and he went above and beyond that night. He took the effort to go to that. He took the effort he put that training in place, and he was also on this call, but I would work with him, trust him with my family's life any day of the week. But to hear him say that the training that I helped with, put into place, helped him do that extraordinary thing, sells you for doing more. It just, you're invested that much more. You're like, okay, we're doing it right. We're moving in the right position. And having support to be able to do that is, speechless. You can't put a price on that. It's priceless. So you don't say it, but that's really what's giving you, this is huge, and feels awesome to get, just very awkward. But hearing those outcomes and hearing other people who you've trained help people goes without words. So,
well, and I'm impressed. Now, this is not a paid endorsement that I'm about to give, but I'm impressed with that guy over there, and I've been watching him for a few years, and really the feeling that I get when I come in here, and you could tell when you have good leadership, average leadership, or terrible leadership. And as a leader, this has to be done. because when it comes right down to it, regardless of what the political or social climate is out there, it comes down to you, your agency. You got to protect one another. You've got to give the attaboy, attagirl, and you have to recognize these things, because in the event that you start doubting or feeling overwhelmed by what's going on out there, that nobody cares, I don't even know why I do this, I don't suspect that'll ever happen in this agency.
I don't see it happening.
But as we sit here, I do counsel people from across the nation, and there are first responders right now who feel abandoned, betrayed by their administrators.
Right.
That's not going to happen with this guy. Mm-hmm. And he didn't pay me to say this. And I come through here and I say, man, I want to hang around leaders like this. A servant leader, leading from the front. He takes this seriously. And I am so impressed listening to you talk that I'm like, I got to pinch this guy, see if he's real. You're the type of guy that I'm proud to say, wow, he's one of ours, and remaining humble. I've never been one to want to be in the spotlight myself. This is like, my wife says, oh, you love doing it. I says, no, I have no choice but to do it because I'm the leader of our ministry. People don't know this about me, but I get nervous when I stand before people, and my stomach gets all in, and it's like, well, you seem like you're so, well, I feel like God made me for this. I don't always like doing it, but I feel like it's what I'm supposed to do. And pulling people together and having these types of conversations, really, that's what the goal for the Ogle County Peer Support Network. We want to be a trusted voice and a valued resource, not only for this agency, but agencies in our county and then well beyond. And I have this bright idea that we should be a trendsetter. We should set the pace and show others this is what peer support's supposed to be like. Mm-hmm. And this is what it's all about, because I think things are going to continue to deteriorate in our world. Politics are going to get even more confusing. But here, with Sheriff Vanvickle at the helm, the first, and of course, I'm big on leadership. I've been through a lot of leadership training through the years. The biggest thing I think I would say is that the number one responsibility of any leader is to define reality. This is what's real in this agency. This is the way it is. Yeah. I love this. We're still raising good kids. We want good work ethic. We want people that aren't afraid to get their hands dirty. And it's like, yeah, this entitlement thing has got to go away. It won't go away. No. But it doesn't have to infiltrate here. And that's what I hear you saying. I love that. There's nobody else coming. You're it. You're the guy. So do it. So I am truly appreciative of this opportunity just to sit here with you guys, and and again, I mean, I jokingly call him Your Majesty, but he's real. I love watching him when he does his thing. It's like, this guy's cool, man, and you obviously this is a great fit, and to have you on this podcast is quite an honor, and it is amazing. If there's anything else that you would like to say, anything else that you think is relevant or pertinent, anything at all, and Josh, Sheriff, whatever, any thoughts?
Well, you spoke about leadership, and I think leadership is huge. And I think, being in, this field and all the fields I'm in here long enough, you realize that there's definitely a difference between leadership and management. Mm-hmm. And those can go hand in hand, but without leadership, you don't get buy-in, I don't think. And if you get buy-in on management and not leadership, then it's probably the wrong buy-in. I will say that the good leaders I have and have experienced, one, they're approachable, and Sheriff Vanvickle obviously is approachable. And two, there's prime examples. I can give you all day long with this, and you've probably already heard many of the stories, but there will be times where, a lot of times, like if I work for the sheriff's office on patrol, that 2P to 2A schedule kind of falls into where I can make that work between the other schedules. There's been times where it's been 2, 3 in the morning, and it's a busy night, and you're out and you're like, try and take care of this, try and take care of that, try and take care of this. And all of a sudden the sheriff pulls up next to you and you're like, what are you doing out at this time? And he jumps right in and he goes to work. And it's hard not to give buy-in when you have somebody who's willing to do that. And not just Sheriff Vanvickle, there's other leaders in the area who are extremely, exactly the same way. But I can tell you that stands out working for this agency. I accept constructive criticism. And I've grew up getting chewed out because I did something wrong, and, through that. So I will take that. It's not very often I get that here, but hopefully because I don't need it. But if I do need it, I expect that. And then I hit the ground and put my nose on the grindstone and keep moving forward to make myself better. But I think that they've, Sheriff Vanvickle and other admin have done a really good job at paving the way, showing expectations, and then holding you to that. And when they will come out and work right alongside you and get right in the dirt with you, how do you not buy into that? How do you not be a part of an organization who's willing to push like that? And like I said, there's organizations all over Ogle County who do that. Oh, yeah. But other leaders see that. And if the other leaders are kind of holding back or being like a management style and they see that kind of leadership, how do you not either jump on board or get out of the way? Because it's hard to deny that there's something special going on there. So,
yeah. Well, and that's what we can perpetuate here, and that's what, we can set that example for the up-and-coming generation, that this is the way you do it. Management is a lot different than leadership, and just because you have a title doesn't make you a leader.
Yeah,
absolutely not.
So would you agree, I'm going to throw this out there. I personally believe that you're not born a leader, that you have to learn. Mm-hmm. You're born with characteristics and traits.
Yep.
And obviously you would agree that, leaders are made.
Yeah, I'll probably get teary-eyed over this because it's near and dear to my heart, but I grew up working for my grandpa. Really special relationship because I worked with him for a long, long time. I better take a drink of water on that one.
Yeah, gonna get me going too.
But, he grew up in that World War II generation, and, everything that we learned from him, how to treat people, how to take care of people, family dinners, all that stuff. And so that's where this all comes from. It's generational. It's not, something that I invented. It came from, Sunday dinner at my great-grandma's house with fried chicken every Sunday, and then going back for supper that night, and working around the yard with him. And, my grandpa being 97, having, a quarter-acre garden out there, weeding it. And, that's where this comes from. I read something a few months ago where first responders have between 400 to 600 traumatic events that they witness in their career. Mm. And so growing up in a family business, this is a family business too, and you got to take care of your family. And so that's why the peer support's important. That's why the training's important. That's why, you saw it when we were at DeKalb, how Sheriff Sullivan took it to heart when Christina got killed. Because it really is family.
Yeah. Well, I think that's why I feel so drawn to you, Sheriff, is because we share the same. My grandfather, I can't go there either. And it's true, sitting around the table, spending time together. I'm forever grateful.
I think those values that you learn in that atmosphere, you don't learn those in a school. You don't learn those in a college. Those are traits that you pick up from your family and perpetuate from there. Mm-hmm. And that is important. Those roots are deep.
Yeah, absolutely.
And like I say, we have training, fire EMS training and law enforcement. There's lots of training. Training turns out to be really premium for us in terms of hours spent and dollars spent, et cetera. But although that's important, the more important part of that when you're training is that networking that you do with one another, because that's what really puts those cogs definitely together when you go to a scene. It's not just you, it's others around you that are getting stuff for you, or that you need something, or anticipating the next need or whatever. And I think to me that was, as I look back on my career as a first responder, it's not anything that I ever studied for. I had a couple guys, one was a relative, the other one was a friend that I worked with, and they just kept haranguing me about coming down to the fire station. I told them, okay, if I go down Tuesday night, will you leave me alone from then on? And that's kind of how it started for me. And it was totally a foreign location for me being there, but the people going out and being able to help people, that was the draw for me. That was the everything. Even though I didn't realize it at the time, that was really what fired me and all of that. And like you said, with the training, being able to be an instructor, all that does is just make you learn.
Yeah.
When you train, that's when you learn yourself. Yeah. And there's nothing better. That's probably one of the most rewarding parts of what I did, I think, was being able to train. And then I had a couple opportunities after I retired to come back and help with the academy and with the new fire behavior and everything. And talking about having something, from people that you grew up with in those services. And then, I mean, look at the change that we've seen.
Yeah.
Law enforcement, I'm sure, has been the same thing, but fire and EMS. My EMS career started in '82. Ooh.
82.
Yeah.
How old were you in '82, Josh?
I was born in November of '82. I knew it was going there.
Oh, boy.
I was 6.
And honestly, that's when things really were starting to change. And I'm very fortunate to have been able to start in at that location, really, in that. The hours started going up for training, for your initial training. Everything was hospital-based, which I think it's probably pretty much still is. But, man, the differences equipment-wise, the training, the skill sets, I mean, it seemed like, especially in those first few years, we were having to relearn all the time.
Yeah.
And the technologies that are available, but it really gets down to the technologies are great and they are helpful, but you got to be able to do it without it when there ain't no power.
Yeah. Yep. And we, especially, in all the fields, fire, EMS, and law enforcement, everything is a constant change, like we had talked before. But just from the time I've been in Rochelle Fire for 18 years, there is a night and day difference between what EMS was then and what it is now, and probably what it will be by the time I get to the point where, we're looking at maybe slowing it down to 4 jobs instead of 5 or 6. But it's doing that change. There's also pushback, I'm sure at one point maybe I'll be like that, and I try not to be. But when we first started talking about tactical medicine, that wasn't brand new. Military had it. A couple other places around the area had it. And then I started looking as they're in a very intense situation, a very high-risk situation with not much medical there. And, if you have somebody who's shot in an artery, you have, rule of thumb is 3 to 5 minutes. You can read textbooks that say more, less. Either way, right. You're looking at minutes, maybe seconds, depending on what the situation is. So when we first started talking about that and first started making that happen, and then, the leaders at the fire department, the leaders at the sheriff's office, when Sheriff Vanvickle came along, all of a sudden we started stepping that up. And then we had to get the people at the hospital be accepting of it and find the right doctor who was willing to work with us. And after doing all of that, we still had people who, old school firefighters, the old salties, as we say, and more power to them. They saw a lot of fire and did a lot of things. But it was a new world, and we had new risks that we had to manage and new situations that we had to make better. I can't tell you how many people approached me from that old school were like, stay in your lane, stay out of this. This is not the way to go. You have no business there. And I'm like, I have other people who think that we do, and I think we do. And, I still try to be respectful, but at the same time, continue to push forward. And we wouldn't be here today if we didn't have the right people in the right places willing to take that risk and willing to make those changes. That's still going to happen in the future. There'll still be other things. I mean, there's sheriff's offices around the world, or around the United States, who actually have, a sheriff's deputy who has all the paramedic stuff on board, responding, in rural areas that may only have, BLS units or EMTs, and those people are great, but they bring a higher level on calls that may require that higher level. So now they respond to there as law enforcement, but also a paramedic, and now they're helping those, and they make that change on duty, and they go from there. So there's changes happen all over. I think getting some of the old salties, without a better term, who have that mindset of, nope, this is the way we do it. This is the way we've always done it. We're not changing. I think that's a cancer in the first responder world, is saying this is the way we've always done it. It doesn't mean every change is good. Doesn't mean every change is bad, but change is necessary because the world changes. And, for lack of resources, we have to make those changes. And even places with big resources have to make those changes. Mm-hmm. So, I think that's important to note that don't be afraid to challenge it, but don't push it too much when then all of a sudden you ruin a reputation where nobody will listen. If I'm like, we all need Corvettes responding on the sheriff's office, I'm sure there's a lot of people who'd be on board. I'm sure the bean counters would not be on board with that, or it wouldn't be the best, way to spend money. But, there's things that just need to change that we have to figure out how to.
I mean, one example, I guess, would be, who would have thought that the sheriff's office would have a certified ambulance?
Yes.
I mean,
yes,
that's
absolutely
something that we have here for our SWAT team. It's, outside the box. It was a need that these guys recognized, and we made it happen. So, again, that's just, something small that we did, but it fit a gap in service. So.
And has done a lot of really good things, even in things we didn't notice. We were thinking, Thames, a SWAT team, there's big risks there. This right here happened because I happened to have the equipment with me to respond with the SWAT team, because we had people open doors for us to help make that change. So this right here, after all of the discussions I had with people who were against it, after all of the meetings we went to and discussions we've had, and, I'm just one little piece in that whole aspect. There was a lot of players in the game who got on board and moved in the right direction. But out of all of that, one person's life has continued on for unknown amount of years, and families are affected. Every single meeting, every single article I read, every single person I talked to, was all worth it. And that's just one little piece of it,
It's just amazing. I think about it. Our podcast starts off with, I think there's a quote that comes on. And there was I just took something out of that quote where I don't know how this came to me. I was just putting together for whatever that ceremony was. I was putting something together for that, and this just came to me. In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, you intervene on behalf of mankind. Sheriff, that's what you do. You intervene on behalf of mankind. And I always say that God himself is reaching out to those who suffer through your hands. So you owe it to your call, to your passion, to be the best that you can. And your service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life. That's really a big one for me as a religious leader, because I always get stuck with the questions from people, why? Why? Well, I can tell you this, God was there, and every effort was made to help your loved one, to give a better outcome. You can't always do it, and speaking of all the pieces working together, we had an incident years ago with the woman in the river where, Sheriff, I don't know if you were there on that call, but her car had went off, and I think she had hit upside down, went into the river, and the call came in for a car in the river. And by the time we all got there, they had already started pulling the car to the riverbank, but she was deceased, and she's no longer deceased. Everything was working together. Mm-hmm. Everything happened. All the resources, even a FedEx driver who jumped in there, and everything just worked together. And so I say, listen, I'm a part of that. You're a part of that. So let's be the best part that we can be and do our job well. Yep. We can't always change everything, but doggone it, I'm going to try.
Yeah,
I'm going to do my best.
It was interesting. We on that call, we were able to. It was through EMS week. We had her back, and she was there, as well as some of the people who had helped out. And when you heard their stories, they would just huddle around you and say, I prayed, and then the door opened. Things of that nature. Everybody was recognizing God's presence and all that. And you take anybody out of that equation,
it's a failure.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a failure.
Yeah.
Yes. And that's, I know I keep coming back to this because we mentioned it, but that was exactly the feeling there. Like, you did your training, you did what you knew had to be done. It was intense, there's no doubt there, but it's almost like the way things were falling into place. One little detail out of place. Just speaking from my own, it's not very often where if I'm off work, then I'm at home without my kids. My kids were there. My wife was off work. I was home. I was standing there in the living room when my phone and my iPad and my radios and all of that started going off. I'm like, what's going on? And I look and I'm like, I looked up at my wife. I didn't have to say anything. I'm like, I got to go. She's like, we'll see you when you get back. Didn't ask a question. Picked up and ran with the ball with the kids. There was other things going on. I left. The people who showed up, the people who brought their A game that day, like they do every day. But there was definitely another presence. I will never deny that. We can't go into details, but there's a lot more that explains how I feel, and I'm not the only person who feels that way. I talk to other people there.
I mean, I will say that, she probably shouldn't have lived. I mean, it was millimeters. I mean, it was, and quick reaction, and that's they don't get any closer, razor's edge than that.
I mean, and change the whole course of that family's future. I mean, the trajectory has been forever altered now. Man, I tell you, and that's why, as any good leader knows, that's important. Yeah, you don't have to like it. You don't have to, well, I didn't do it for that. It's just my job. I love when first responders say that, guys, I'm just doing my job. I know, but we appreciate you doing your job well. You could be a slacker, but you chose not to be, right?
Absolutely.
I mean, thank you for doing your job well and taking it serious, because we count on you to bring those hands into the darkness so that God can work through them. And it's such a privilege. I've never been more proud and honored than at Deputy Mussel's funeral, just to be a part of the team where, I mean, it's just overwhelming. It's like, oh, my God, this is a very difficult situation. And, we take it personal. I mean, it's not right. It's not right what happened. But everybody shows up and does their very best to say, well, as hard as this is, we've got to press on and we've got to do the right thing here. And that's what this is all about, is just encouraging one another. And one thing that was said that I think I want to leave with the audience, because now people will listen to this podcast, who knows where and when. But no doubt there are going to be people right now, and there are people in different agencies that don't feel the way that we do. I'm sorry. That's why you should come here. But when the sheriff mentioned family, we treat this like it's family. There's the answer right there. No matter what's happening out there in the political world, the social world, we got you. We're family, and we're going to do right by you. You don't ever have to worry about this man betraying you.
Absolutely.
He's got you, and you know that. And that's the long and short of it, is that we can remedy so much if we will just stay together and cover each other. I know there's a lot of egos. I get it on both sides of the fence. There's egos everywhere, but when it comes right down to it, we are all each other has. And so thank you guys. I mean, both of you. And Chief Lewis, is there anything else you want to throw in there before we wrap this up?
Oh, this has been a great talk. It stirred up a lot of things within me, as well as in terms of just looking back over time. I started when Sheriff Brooks
Great guy.
was here.
He's a great guy.
And, getting involved with the Sheriff's Department back then when we first was doing the IPRIS, things like that, and then Mel Messer and Sheriff Beidel and everything. And I didn't get to, I was already,
You're
already hung
out to
it up
pasture.
when you came in. But I'll tell you what, the just like yesterday when I came in, it came in with these boards, and there were some officers in here, and I thought, oops, I wasn't supposed to be in. No, come on in. I mean, the welcoming, and for a fire guy coming into a sheriff's department, it's really been great, the feeling that I've had and the welcoming and everything. It's been awesome. You can feel that the leadership here is on board with everything. And then getting a chance to meet you, great last name.
Yeah.
And just hearing your story and just kind of putting myself back in that in my I had 33 years on the department and started out volunteer. My wife and I both started the same day as volunteers, her in the radio room and myself as a firefighter, and then she got hired full time before I did. And then we ended our careers the same year as well. And looking back, I wouldn't do anything any different. Were there some rough spots? Whew, baby. But and very rewarding. But now looking back, I know that it was a call because there was so many things that went against the grain of everything. But it was that call from God that helped me make it through all of that. Mm-hmm. And now I'm really enjoying this retirement time and still being able to be involved with the services and firefighters and police officers and doing this has been very, very rewarding.
I also want to tell you guys, I think what you're doing is amazing. The chaplain and the peer support team and all of that, like, it truly does show. I think anytime I've been with Ogle County, anytime something happens, you always get a phone call, you always get a text, people are always reaching out, and like we have that family aspect, but this kind of locks it all together, I think. Your team that you have, the deputies that are involved in that too, all amazing. I think that you guys are really stepping it up on that aspect, and that's refreshing. That's refreshing. So,
thank you for saying that. And it means a lot coming from you, obviously getting to know you, and I still think you're going to make a good chaplain one day.
We might talk about that one day. I have a lot of cleaning up to do before I'm in those shoes. So.
Yeah. Well, this has been absolutely amazing, and thank you, Josh, very much. And Sheriff, thank you for this opportunity. Yeah. And
thanks for having me.
So this will air during EMS week. So tell all your family and friends, check us out. So on that note, thank you guys very much.
Dispatch from Route 7 Command.
Man, go ahead.
Need a chaplain at this location?
10-4. Attention 3392. 3392, you're needed at the 8000 block of Route 7, multiple vehicle accident. Please acknowledge.
3392 is en route, 8000 block, Route 7.
10-4.
In the darkest blackness of human carnage and suffering, police, fire, and EMS intercede on behalf of mankind. God himself reaches out to those who suffer through their hands. Their service is a clear and unmistakable demonstration that God does not abandon people in the storms of life.